Chapter 36, The Banquet. Remember, a banquet is a big feast. Look at how long Duke's horn is getting. Everybody leaned forward to catch what Jim Dandy's father had to say. Straightening his bent shoulders as much as he could, Double Knot took a breath and advised, "Don't make the same mistake I did, son. Go out and make your own." So he's telling his dad he made the mistake of falling for Bodacious's trick. With that, he let go of Jim Dandy's shoulders and slouched back towards the cave. If there was a throat thereabouts that didn't hide a sizable lump, it wasn't mine. Not after all the times I refused advice from my own mom and dad. Of course, Bodacious Deepthink was all cinders and gas. So what do you think that means, cinders and gas? Do you think she was happy about that advice, or do you think she was not very happy about that advice? Finally, she wasn't very happy. Finally, Jim Dandy broke the silence, saying to Bodacious Deepthink, "If you're done with your sales pitch, we came to trade for some crickets." Hearing that, Jim Dandy's father held his head higher and picked up his pace. I think that means that he was proud of his son, that he didn't fall for the trick, because usually when you stand up taller, you're more proud. Bodacious Deepthink responded by whamming her staff down and shaking the entire valley. "What have you got to trade?" she snarled. "2 shooting stars and 1 meal," Biz squeaked after Jim Dandy's elbowed him. "1 banquet?" Jim Dandy corrected. "That?" Bodacious Deepthink roused with a snort of disbelief. She was pointing at Duke, who was holding up the burlap sack he'd been carrying. "Guaranteed delicious," Duke promised. To prove his point, he untied the neck of the sack and dumped out the food inside. Stones fell to the ground, barely missing his toes. Stones? "Doesn't look like much," Bodacious Deepthink wrinkled her nostrils. "He just got the horn," Jim Dandy said. "The rest is coming." When the great rock troll took 2 steps toward and turned Duke to the side for a better view, my cousin didn't even squawk. He was still gazing down at the stones as if expecting them to turn into goat cheese and pig's feet and oxtails. Wait a second, I'm confused. Jim Dandy said, "He's just got the horn and the rest is coming." And then Bodacious Deepthink looks at Duke and turns him around. Is he the meal? "Done," Bodacious Deepthink said, liking Duke's profile. Over her shoulder she shouted, "Bring me those crickets." Double Knot surprised everyone by shouting from the mouth of the cave, "Get them yourself!" Bodacious Deepthink grumbled over to the wagon, which she shoved forward with her staff. "These are the ones you want," Bodacious Deepthink scoffed. "Your father's did too, except for Double Knot, of course." The 3 white crickets inside the cage looked old and rickety enough to have met a lot of fathers. One had a bent antenna, another stood lopsided, the last one was drooling. "We'll take them," Jim Dandy said, reaching. "Stars first." Bo batted Jim Dandy's hand away with her staff. When Jim Dandy handed over the jewelry boxes, Bodacious Deepthink sniffed without opening the lids. "They'll do." She wasn't impressed. "Say," Duke bawled, finally coming to his senses, "what happened to the mutton and goat cheese and stuff?" Duke looked from Jim Dandy to Stump to Biz, all of whom were looking too busy admiring the crickets to answer. "You come with me," Bodacious Deepthink said to my cousin. "Come on." "Run!" I shouted. But he didn't. All he managed to do was stare in disbelief as Bodacious Deepthink lifted a rope from the wagon and lassoed him so expertly that you knew she'd done it before. Reeling Duke in, the great rock troll tucked him over her shoulder and turned towards the cave. "What's going on?" Duke cried out. "Take your crickets," Bodacious Deepthink bellowed above Duke's wails. "Leave the cage." With that, the great rock troll plodded toward the caves as if she couldn't even feel Duke splashing about. So those 3 trolls gave Duke up in exchange for the crickets. They were just using him the whole time. I knew they were using him, but I didn't know for that. Spotting me on the ground, Duke pointed at me and screamed, "Take her! Take Claire! She'll do whatever!" He never got around to finishing his offer. Right then he let out an ear-piercing yowl that Jim Dandy, Biz, and Stump all stopped admiring Crickets and straightened up as if something house-highs had exploded. Duke's horn shot out about another 6 inches, because he was trying to get Claire in there, too. His arms thickened, legs, too. The seams on his black zipper coat ripped everywhere, and his skin puckered with wrinkles. Unfurling like leaves opening in a spring, his ears shot upward with fur and tufts on top. He turned black and gray everywhere, and his fingers melded together into hooves. A tail split his pants. "That's more like it," Bodacious Deepthink said, happy at last. She didn't flinch under the added weight, but barked to Double Knot, "Get the wagon!" He just turned into a full rhinoceros. That last mean act just did him in. This time Jim Dandy's father obeyed, although not before saying, "Just remember one thing, son. These Crickets are the worst kind of liars. Every last one of them." With that, he opened the cage door, scooped out the 3 decrepit Crickets, and placed one on the shoulder of each river troll. Jim Dandy got his last. "Why don't you come with us?" Jim Dandy sputtered. "Don't think it's not tempting," Double Knot whispered. "But I've made my choices, and who knows, I might do something good here yet." Picking up the wagon handle, he started toward the cave, calling over his shoulder, "You boys better get moving. Bo's been known to change her mind." About then I heard one last blubbering wail from just inside the cave. "Take her, not me!" Duke remained tucked over Bodacious Deepthink's stony shoulder, still pointing a hoof at me. "I don't think she wants just little girls. She wants the ones that turn into rhinoceroses." Chapter 37. A Hero, a Hero, a Hero. Looks like the Crickets. Now remember, the Crickets are liars. Duke's cries dwindled until the cave swallowed them completely. For a bit longer I heard the creaking wagon that Double Knot was pulling. After that, the glow from Bodacious Deepthink's lantern swayed back and forth until suddenly winking out. From inside the earth came a pop and a crinkle as the cave door began to slide down. Just as morning sunlight first nickered the treetops, the cave's mouth was gone. Solid rock faced us again. "We did it!" Stump whispered, hardly daring to believe it. For once, only Jim Dandy had nothing to say. Think he's feeling bad about Duke, or maybe missing his father. He stood there staring at where his father had been. I guess that answers my question. He misses his dad. The Cricket perched on his shoulder said, "Take your time. I'm sure she won't be back." Now remember, Crickets are liars, so what is the Cricket really meaning? "You know what that means," Biz squeaked, trying to shove way past the others. "That means hurry, because she'll come back." "What about Duke?" I called out, still tied to the pole lying on the ground. But they weren't in any mood for listening, only running, although my voice did slow Biz enough to bend over and slip his crown ring off my finger. "Mine," he squeaked before dashing after the others. So much for a troll's pledge. "Where's the fire?" Biz's Cricket called out, which made the river trolls sprint all the faster. "What about me?" I shouted. That only spurred them all the more. Moving on all fours with their tails between their legs, they plowed through the thickets, clawed over each other to gain the lead, and never looked back. "Hey!" I screamed. The words echoed around the clearing. There was only one set of ears available to hear them, and that set belonged to me. By then the 3 river trolls were nothing but snapping branches and squeals farther down the valley. I tried standing, and fell. I tried chewing through the leather straps binding me, and gagged. Whatever type of beast the leather was cut of burned my mouth. Every other second I glanced toward the rock wall, praying it stayed closed. My only other option seemed to be crying. I just started making a puddle when someone came crashing back into the clearing. Blundering to my rescue was Stump. The look of terror that twisted his snout said he'd come back against his better judgment. At least the Cricket on his riding on his shoulder had the decency to urge him forward by singing out, "You're a hero, a hero, a hero!" "Shut up, you!" Stump hissed. At first I thought he was warning me, but then the Cricket wouldn't quit with the hero stuff. Stump grabbed him, stuffed him into a vest pocket of his vice-clean togs, zipped up the pocket shut, From another pocket he whipped out a knife made from a horn and began cutting my straps. "Liars," he muttered. "Who?" I said, so relieved at being rescued that I didn't have enough sense to keep my mouth closed and let him concentrate on freeing me. "Cave crickets," he said. "Legend has it that one of them promised to lead Bo to the moon, and when that didn't happen, she dropped a curse on them, turned them all into liars. Come on." By then he sliced through the leather strips and was pulling me to my feet. He started walking back down the alley without seeing if I followed. What else would I be doing? Once the circulation to my hands and feet returned, I soon caught up with Stump. It seems like Stump is one of the nicer of the three, like he has some niceness in him. A few 100 yards later, we both met up with Jim Dandy and Biz, who were leaning against trees trying to catch their wind. As soon as we reached them, they sprinted on again, leaving us behind. Between gasps, I told Stump, "Thanks." "You're shouting," he said, pausing to suck down a breath. Your shouting," he paused, "reminded me of Duckwad." So he went back because he was thinking about his brother. Okay. So far now we've got a whole mess. We've got Duke with Bodacious. They've got their crickets. Claire still doesn't have the stone feather to turn everybody back from stone. And now we've got Duke. I don't know. Something's going to happen. And Claire still thinks that she might be Duckwad. So I don't know what's going on.